Welcome to Women at Halftime podcast. Well, not just for women, for you men too. If you're at mid-career or the halftime of life, our inspirational topics are not only fun, but also meant to help you maximize and write your next chapter. Right here with me, Deborah Johnson. Well, hello, everyone. I am so excited with the guest that I have for you today. This is Deborah Johnson, Women at Halftime podcast. A lot of men watch us as well, too, so feel free to click in because you're going to want to hear about the story we have today with Paul Cook. Paul, thank you so much for being here today. It's just, yes. Oh, it's just a wonderful, wonderful thing. I want you to make sure. Can you say something again? Say hello.
Hi.
There you go. I wanted to make sure your sound was working because
Okay.
your picture. We are, this is virtual. Paul right now is in Canada as I'm interviewing him. And we actually had set something up to possibly do one a little bit before, and you were in South Africa. So this is a little easier because of the time
Yeah.
difference. So, but it's still amazing, the picture and everything that we can get. So I met Paul on a trip to South Africa. Paul was our guide with Backroads at probably one of the most amazing people that I've ever met with how much you knew about plants, about animals, about the landscape, because you were born there in South Africa. But just because you were born there doesn't mean that you're going to know all of this. So we're going to get into that a little bit. But just to remind everybody to make sure that you do get, I do have a couple things I promote, which is the summit is one, but part of this is because of travel. And as you travel to your summit, it's nice to have these life experiences. So, which South Africa was definitely a great experience. So, Paul, I'd like to start out with our interview. I'm just kind of going to get right into this because you've got your coffee ready and you are ready.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ready.
You are ready to go. It's so compelling. You went through apartheid in South Africa. Can you just give a little bit of background of what that was like as a kid?
Yeah. So I was born into apartheid in 1980. So do the math. You can figure out how old. But I was born into apartheid, and that was kind of like the last years of it kind of coming to an end. So it was a very turbulent time because there was obviously a lot of pushback from the African and tribal population and communities. And, being born into an upper middle class, white, privileged family and having servants. So we had gardeners and maids and everything. And through different kind of experiences throughout my childhood, it led my parents to eventually move to Canada. Yeah. So it was, I mean, it's crazy when you think about it. And I think back and, the school that I went to first a public school in South Africa, was fully white, no integration, nothing at all. And then my parents put me into a private school, which was integrated. So basically it meant if you had enough money, you can go there. It doesn't matter what color your skin was. And for South Africa, that was something that was a bit more unique. Not many people grew up like that. And that was mostly because I lived in a farming community after we left Johannesburg. And that was a different, totally different kind of lifestyle and aspect as to what most people grew up with being in the cities.
Mm. Now you were young, of course, very young, and you had shared that you learned how to even shoot a gun when you were young, and you had to actually defend your farm at one point. And I don't know how old were you, like 9 or 13? I think you were. Tell us just a tiny bit and what that felt like, because this was as we read about, some of the apartheid and the things that went on, the conflict, and you had to move like in the middle of the night. So I just want people to understand that you were born into, being able to have the gardeners and being able to have all of this, but you definitely had to like flee for your life. So
Yeah, there were definitely some very dangerous kind of touch and go moments. But let's start with shooting a gun.
Yeah.
We pretty much had a 38 special or something similar revolver in almost every room of the house. My mom would carry one in her purse. My dad would have one in the we call it the cubby hole in South Africa, but the glove box of the car, because you never kind of knew if you were going to get stopped on the road, end up in some kind of roadblock. One of the reasons why we left Johannesburg when I was 8, I think I was 8 years old, is that there was a gunfire across the street from us. There was a gas station across the street from where we lived. And, automatic gunfire and explosions and all kinds of things going off in the middle of the night. And that was in Johannesburg. So we left Johannesburg and we moved to a little town called Hilton. And then something very similar happened. We actually lived across the street from the police station, the village. And, again, there was like crazy gunfire and, a lot of homes being broken into and stuff. So my parents left there after a very, very short time. We lived there for like a year, not even. And then we moved to what I just usually refer to as the farm. And that was probably close to 100 acres, just outside of the city. And I remember my dad, when we moved there, he was like, okay, here's the gun. And we went down to, we had an earthen dam. And we went down there and he said, okay, now we're going to shoot. And you're going to learn how to shoot because you need to learn how to shoot. And, we would, and it sounds kind of dramatic, like you need to learn how to shoot. By that age, I pretty much had known someone who had been, in some kind of violent crime or known of someone. And that was kind of the general story across South Africa. And so I learned how to shoot and I had a gun in my room. And
oh, gosh.
I remember it was once my mom and I were driving home. She had just picked me up from school. It was about a 45-minute drive away. We just turned onto the road that goes to the farm. And somebody jumped out of the bushes and she's like, grab the gun, because it was in the glove box. And I grabbed the gun and I jumped out and they were shooting at us and we were shooting at them. So that was fine. And, another time, and then, where my sister and I literally had to defend the farm and our lives.
Wow.
Someone had been hiding in the bushes and my parents left to go to dinner with a family friend. And not long after that, we noticed a light coming up through the property. And like there was a cliff at the end of that, that piece of. So there's no way that someone could have accidentally just like wandered onto the land. And so we both got very nervous and we ran into basically like what I would call like a panic room. Here was also / a wine cellar. And ran in there, and that's where the gun safe was. And we kind of hunkered down in there. And my sister and I, we heard someone trying to break in. And we ended up having a gunfight in the house. because these folks came in and they were shooting at us, and we were shooting at them, and
Wow.
shots were fired and they ran off. And my parents came home and they were like, what the hell has been going on here?
Yeah. Now, how old were you there, Paul?
Well,
You were 12.
well,
See, this is just what you grew up with, what that was expected, and with the conflict there. And the reason I wanted to kind of, know some of this background is because you work today with so many South Africans.
mhm.
And I mean, to see your mannerism with them and your kindness and how well you fit in everything, the language, the culture, everything. And how were you able then, you ended up, well, I skipped a little part because you had to leave in the middle of the night and flee for your lives, basically, from the farm. You had to leave everything, right?
Yeah, we kind of left I mean, it wasn't quite as dramatic as leaving in the middle of the night. Canada, there's rules, and it's a hard country to get into. And even at that time, but a lot of South Africans were leaving in the 90s. They were just unsure of what kind of the future of the country was going to look like. And is this going to be another Zimbabwe where it goes totally like sideways? Zimbabwe, I don't know if you know, is now like 95% unemployment. And it's just the neighboring country to the north. So a lot of Zimbabweans live in South Africa now, as an aside.
Yes.
Because they're looking for opportunity and they're looking for work. And working in South Africa now, / living kind of, because I'm with work, I'm there 4, 5 months out of the year. And it's wonderful to be back in South Africa, and wonderful to see more integration and more freedom, and there's still a lot of hate and a lot of anger in South Africa, and a fair amount of violence. You can't really let your guard down. Put it that way. You've always kind of be aware of where you are. However, I've learned that first of all, being in Canada kind of opens your eyes to, as a young teenager when I moved here at 14, it's like, wow, I have freedom, first of all. Like I could go anywhere, jump on the bus, go downtown, spend the day in the city, and then jump on the bus and come back. And my parents were fairly confident, and I was fairly confident that, nothing's going to happen to you. Where in South Africa, you might be able to do it, but kind of taking a chance.
Yeah. Wow.
And then, it opens your eyes because you're in a fully multicultural society where you go to the grocery store and there's 10 different languages being spoken and 20 different types of food. And so you're exposed to a lot in Canada.
Right.
And as a young man, I think I was kind of saw the wonders of being in a multicultural society. I used to go and hang out with my Filipino friends in high school. They're like traditional Filipino foods and, fish heads and all kinds of stuff. And, it opens your eyes and you become more aware. And then you also realize, like, okay, there's things I actually have to change about myself that were ingrained in me as a child through a schooling system, through a government system, through propaganda, just in general how society thought during apartheid. It's a racist, xenophobic society. And so, working in South Africa now is just wonderful to be able to, if you're an open and friendly and happy person, you receive it generally from people. So that's what I find. And I now have lots of friends there and, of all races and cultures. And it is a lovely place, honestly, when you open your heart and you open your mind.
And we could see that with you as you were our guide, and we became just, the conversations that I even watched with, you having with the people there. They were just wonderful people, first of all, and they were so happy for the work because we were one of the first tours coming back after COVID too, I think. And unemployment is pretty high there, so we were able to give them work, and but your kindness with the people, and also you have maintained that wonderful, mindset throughout this. I know there were just things that you had to overcome because of, you were raised there as a young child, and then coming back to it. But you split your time between South Africa and Canada now, correct?
Pretty much, yeah. I would say Southern Africa.
Southern Africa.
Canada, but I'm based in Cape Town mostly. But it's lovely to get back and go. Like, as you know, we went to Botswana, Namibia, Zambia, a little bit of Zimbabwe. It's incredible, and the people are just wonderful. And it's, I mean, I was just there, just got back a week ago, and already missing it. But I do miss it. It is a wonderful, wonderful place.
It's so wonderful, and you love your work. And I'm gonna. We had talked about a few things that I might, open up with conversations, but I really want to get to the one too, because we were just talking about, you doing tours. How did you educate yourself with so many plants and so many animals? Because it didn't matter what it was, Paul. It was, this is this. And it's like, or this is this type of animal. And people ask me what one of my best experiences in South Africa was. And it was like just seeing the variety of the animals. You think, okay, there's only one kind of Steenbok. I mean, but there's, there's another. But you knew every single little, idiosyncrasy of these. And how did you educate? That's not learned just in school. It's just not. No. I know education fairly well. That is not just learned in school. So what did you do? How to educate? I mean, you just have this love for it.
I do just like, I absolutely just eat it up. if I hear something like interesting or unique, or I'm like, oh, what's that? And someone is able to tell me what that is. I don't know what it is. But it just sticks. And I think it kind of goes back to from being a kid on the farm. One of my best friends, him and I, we would both we bordered onto a wilderness reserve area, provincial wilderness park kind of thing. And so there were the animals and the snakes and the spiders and the lizards and the chameleons and all of that stuff. Also, like some of the big animals. And so just being exposed to that as a kid, being able to steal away like from home with my little backpack at 12 years old, 13 years old, and just wander into the game reserve and turn over rocks and sneak up on animals and just be like a bit of a wild outdoor bush kid, which is a pretty typical life for a lot of farm kids in South Africa at that time growing up. And so kind of idyllic, but I just ate it up as a kid. I absorbed it. I knew all the birds. I don't know all the birds now, but I've got my bird book on my phone.
It sounds like you do. In fact, in the airport, I picked up, I don't have them in front of me now, but I picked up a bird book and an animal book just like yours because I thought, this is what's helping Paul. But you knew it without even looking at those books.
No, and it's just interest in seeing it, and just it feeds your soul. I think, and also, David Attenborough was one of my heroes growing up. He did the BBC series in the 80s, I think The Living Planet. And I just consumed it. Same as like anything National Geographic. I just, I just wanted more and more info, more information. Give it to me.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And it kind of developed where, your passion for what you are doing. And as I think through the tough times that you've had, it's because you've had to overcome, so much in your past. But I mean, even one of our first nights, I remember at dinner, you said, oh, I went out, I got here and I was so excited to be here. And we decided to go out, to a club, and I lost my phone. Okay. Yeah. So you don't lose your phone when you're you're in a foreign country. And you said, you know what? I just guess I got to get a new one. I mean, you have this ability to overcome and to say, and then you shared, you had a neck injury. I mean, it was very fun because when we went on hikes, you have the same size foot as my husband, which is 14. They are huge feet. So you were able to be right in front of him, and he was able to get the footsteps on some of those tough hikes. But you overcame so much to even do a hike. So how has your background influenced you've been able to overcome these tough times? Because part of my audience are people that are having a hard time saying, should I reinvent my life right now? I mean, is it worth it? I mean, do I want to at this time of my life? I've been shut down. I'm discouraged. I hate what's going on in the world. All of these things. So how do you manage through that mentally?
Oh, it's tough. It takes work.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of work. But I have to say, at a time, I was miserable in my job. Mm-hmm. I had finished engineering and at university, and I was working doing land surveying out here in Alberta. Mm-hmm. Hated it, like thinking, what have I done? I've made the biggest mistake of my life. I've been to university, I've invested in this education, and now I'm in a career, almost like thinking I've done that at school, so now I have to stay here.
Yes.
Like I've made a prison for myself. And I was miserable, absolutely miserable, would have crippling depression. Just be in bed for days, sometimes weeks. And I think that kind of broke when I sort of I had this moment, like a switch went off that said, you don't have to, who are you living up to? Like, I was living up to what I had been led to believe life was supposed to be like by societal norms. Mm-hmm. From what my parents had told me, schools had told me, teachers have told you, loved ones, relatives, you name it. It's like, it just comes at you from all sides, right? TV. Wow. And, do I have to actually be miserable? Why am I doing this to myself?
Wow. That's a great question.
Yeah. like, why am I doing this to myself? Because this is a shortcut to a heart attack, and I think I was in my late 20s, and I had this moment. And looking around, and I looked at my bosses, who are all these unhappy, overweight, just not happy people. But they're coming to work and they're working 40 to 60 hours a week because they have to. And that just looked like a nightmare for me. And so I looked at what I had and how I could use that to turn things around. So I had a little condo that I bought, a little condominium. It wasn't worth much, but I'd made a little bit. Its value had gone up while I'd owned it for 15 months because I thought I had to buy a condo. So I put all my life savings into a condo that I hated. I lived in it for about a month. And then I packed my bags, and one of my best friends was like, well, I really need a roommate. And he was going on about needing a roommate. And I'm like, Okay. So I packed my bags. I went to his house, knocked on his door, and said, David, do you still need a roommate? Yeah. I had that little condo, so I rented it out instead of living in it. And then one day just decided to sell it and took the money and decided to put it back into what made me happy. And that was being outside, being in nature, turning over rocks,
Yeah.
sneaking up walls. And that's exactly what I did. I planned a year-long volunteer kind of expedition down to Central and South America. I went to Costa Rica for 4 months and worked on a leatherback sea turtle nesting project. It was mind-blowing. It was incredible. And then I spent just shy of 3 months in living in the Galapagos Islands on a little farm that they were converting into a wildlife corridor from the lowlands to the highlands through old farmland. And then I went to Patagonia, and I in the winter, which is like an Alberta winter, so let me tell you,
Whoa.
snowy and cold. And I followed condors for 3 months through the mountains in a tent with a small group of other people. And, it all worked out to, I kind of gave myself a price limit, and it worked out to about $10 to $15 a day kind of thing. So it included all the food and everything. And I came back like a whole new person.
You have just told the story of a lot of people that when they graduate from college or, from some sort of, usually not as much of like a trade school because they've gone into something that they seem to love, but especially with college, and they graduate and they think, I majored in this and I know I should do this, but I really don't like it. Or I'm not good. I don't feel like I'm not doing what I want to do. And some people get stuck in that for the next 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. And then they come to their mid-career and they think, I'm just sick of this. I'm ready to do something else. But you made that decision earlier. And what you are doing now, I just saw the passion of what you absolutely love to do. I mean, you love those, you seem to, at least, unless you're a very good actor. But you loved first of all, being outdoors. You loved the people, and everyone, you took very, very good care of us as your tour. And we were a very small tour, which was unusual, but we were one of the first ones kind of getting back on the track again, especially in South Africa. We made that long trek from Southern California to be there. Long flight. But I thought this was such an appropriate interview because you made those choices. You made it a little earlier, but a lot of people are at this stage now figuring out, what do I really want to do? And you made some sacrifices, but a lot of people will not have to sacrifice as much because they have things saved up. They've got their provisions taken care of, and they really have a lot more freedom, but they're afraid. They're fearful of being able to go on. So I think go ahead.
It's terrifying. It is. It's scary because, you don't know if it's going to work. Yeah. But I think, the most important, and you hear it from so many people like as well, follow your passion. You'll do love. It'll be, and, it just sounds, it's like, that just sounds too easy, or that is like, what kind of scam are you trying to sell me here? And it's terrifying. Not gonna lie. Yeah. Because you don't know. And then, something like this happens with COVID recently. I changed from working in an industry that was basically steady work, engineering, steady work, to an industry that was disrupted for 2 years.
Yeah, completely.
completely, like shut down.
Yes.
And so, you take risks, but I think you take risks in life and everything. Like you just never know.
Right.
And I made the decision when I was just shy of 30 when I went off to South America, and it took another 10 years to find my path with Backroads. So things take time. You just gotta like ride the wave, I think. And if you have a support group out there to help you with it, I think it's so important.
And that's where I've seen Backroads. It's just wonderfully supportive, with the people involved, it seems anyway.
Yeah.
But one thing I wanted to bring out too, because you did follow your passion, what you loved to do. You had a little bit of that background already, and people discount that. In fact, I've been at a point in my life where I was starting to discount some of my past experience because I thought, well, people won't take me seriously, or they won't focus on what I want them to focus on. But you had this background of being out in nature and seeing all of these animals and seeing you spent that time to where it was familiar. And now what you did was build on it, but you had that base. I would think in someone that says, oh, I've always dreamt of being a welder. I'm going to be a welder at this point in my life. It's going to be a harder uphill climb if you've never even had that tool in your hand. You've never even seen it. You don't know the danger, nothing. And I'm not discounting that you'd be able to do that. I think but when you're saying you're passionate about something, you also were able to draw upon some of your past experience, because that's what ignited that passion. Now, that welder going into it might have grown up with a family member who was a welder. So you don't want to discount that, because you've learned a lot more than you thought you did. Like you learned a lot more than you thought you did just being out in nature.
Yeah.
So it is scary going into that. You don't have a huge safety net, but you usually were able to find work. It sounds like, some sort of work, even if it was, not real high paying, but you knew you could do it 10 to 15 bucks a day. I mean, that used to be a possibility. I don't know today if we could do that, but you might some places in the world.
Yeah, no, I think you find, like you said, you use your passion and you have experience. Because you have a passion about it means that you have experience.
I love that term, because when we say follow your passion right after people are in college, and you have a gal that decides to be a yoga instructor because she's always had that passion. Well, now she's going to live in her car because she can't even make a living to do it. It's some sort of experience that gives you an edge, some sort of uniqueness. Your uniqueness, Paul, it comes out in droves when we are on a tour with you. And that's why you are working so much in these areas, because being on a tour with Paul, you can hopefully you'll have a million requests, who knows, but you have to be with the tour people you're with. But it's fascinating because of what you were able to add to those experiences because of your background. Definitely.
Yeah. And it's just, I don't know, for me, it doesn't even feel like work all the time, because, if you have, great guests and everything's going well, there's no hiccups. It really does. It is the dream. It is the dream job for me. It's maybe not for everyone. There's like people look at me and go, "Oh, you're so lucky. You get to travel and you get to do this." And it's like, yeah, but remember, I'm not home.
Yes, there's a lot to that too. There is a lot. Anybody
a year. Yeah. And let me tell you, that's a challenge in itself.
Yes. Yeah. That is a challenge.
No, it's hard to have a relationship with someone, even with friends. It's a challenge.
Right.
But for me, that outweighs being strapped to a desk. Cannot even imagine. Like for me, that is just torture.
Yeah. Well, you're in the right place, and you talked also about changing your mindset. And this is big. This is huge. Changing your mindset from being a victim to a champion. And as I speak about the hero inside, that is really important because people can stay for a very long time. I'm just releasing some articles on getting out of the roundabout. They can stay in the middle of that roundabout for a very long time because they're so self-focused on being a victim. Like, look what happened to me. Look how I got hurt, or look how I can't remember exactly what happened, like with your neck injury. You couldn't even sit or lay or anything. I mean, you couldn't function at all. But you ended up having through all of this champion mentality. You're not going to let that hold you down. What sort of mindsets do you go through of getting out of that victim mentality? Because you could have stayed there, Paul, with your background, you could have stayed there.
Oh, absolutely. And with having, with suffering from depression as well, there's tools that you have to use. And I think for each person, it's probably different what those tools are. But for me, the first thing is I am feeling a victim. And acknowledging that I feel like I'm a victim. Okay. But now what?
Yes.
Who's going to help me? No one can help me except for the doctor.
Yeah.
So what's my next step? And it's thinking about it, kind of putting it into creating a flow chart with, in your brain or in your life, kind of how to get out of it. What's the next step? Okay. What's the next step? And so for me, yes, I'm a victim. I feel like I'm a victim. I get very down, very depressed, and just acknowledging that you're allowed to feel feelings, but you're allowed to live there.
Right.
Because you're no fun to be around, even yourself. You don't want to even be around yourself. No one wants to be around you. And that's the way I feel it. It's like, I can't even stand myself anymore. This is terrible. So how do you change that? And that's, again, okay, stop being the victim. Drag yourself out. You're not going to feel like doing it, but go for a walk. For me, it's like, go for a walk. Walking is my therapy. It allows me to think. If I want to zone out, I put some music on and I put on my favorite songs and I sing and I walk and I do it. I look like it was easier during COVID times because you put a mask on and be like,
no one sees you.
But do and shift it's not even shift the conversation, but it's shift the feeling. Try and get out of that victimhood and don't do the things that are going to make you give you short-term bliss, things like alcohol. Okay, good. Going out for a night, a night with the friends. You're just going to go and forget about this ever happened, or that's not the way to do it, because then you wake up in the morning and I feel worse because I did that.
Right, and there's shortcuts.
And it's not even a shortcut. It's it's a snakes and ladders thing, but the snake is a lot longer than the ladder. Yes,
very good. Yeah.
Just slide backwards on that one. And so it's having those little things, I think, and that's also having a good support system. So being able to phone, say, hey, you want to come over for a cup of coffee or a glass of wine?
Yeah, a glass, yes.
And chat, but don't talk about being a victim either. Try not to focus on that, because then you're pulling other people into it. and you're looking for their affirmations. And so someone's like, oh, yes, I know this. That was just like the worst thing that could have ever happened to you. That's like the last thing that you need to hear.
It becomes a pity party. Yeah.
And then it reaffirms that feeling on yourself. So you're like, okay, well, Joe said that I'm right.
Yeah.
And your brain is telling you that. So it just like re-energizes that roundabout, that wheel.
Yes.
For thinking. And so for me, it's like, just breaking that cycle of feeling the victim and what am I going to do about it?
Yeah. And how many miles do you walk a day? Weren't you like walking 7 or 8 miles?
Yeah, about 7 or 8 miles a day.
Yeah. See, that's wonderful. And you're busy. So, but being able to get outside, and I encourage this so much, just for people to get outside. Even if you're in the middle of the city, you got to find a place.
Yeah,
find
a place.
Yeah.
Explore your neighborhood. Find a route.
Yeah.
If like you have to drive somewhere, and then go on a thing. The process of the drive is the changing your mindset from that being in one environment and transitioning into another. I work outside and I walk a lot, and so I'm always going to be a number one fan for get outside and go for a walk, drink a glass of water, just do something different.
My husband always said, when we had small kids, he said when he had to go to an office, he said there was a certain point I would cross these railway tracks. And he said, I had to leave the office. I had to leave it all there. I could not bring that over those railroad tracks when I was going home. And we have to do that for ourselves, too. We have to leave it. I like the illustration even of leaving it in the car and just, getting it, or just being able to. And that's the process. But it's a decision, too. You have to act on it. You can't just talk about it and say, someday. So
I think there's some fundamental questions to always ask yourself.
Yeah.
Is it in my control? Number one. It's did somebody do something to me? Mm-hmm. Is that within my control to now take that on? Mm-hmm. Usually the answer is no. Right. Because I have things that I think of. It's that's a them problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right.
They were doing something and they lashed out or did something or whatever, if that's the case. Mm-hmm. There's no reason to dwell on something like that.
Right.
Number two, it's usually, I always say as well, it's nobody's business what other people think of you. Mm-hmm. If you take it personally, if you're worried about how you're going to be perceived when you do something, or if you take a chance, or it's that's got nothing to do with you. That's a them problem.
Yeah. Right.
And then the other thing I think of is, if it's out of my control, it's other people's things. Okay, well, it sounds like I should just get back to what I was doing. Right. And that's a huge, some questions for me anyway, that it kind of sounds maybe a little bit casual, or can be a little bit I'm not being really careful of other people's feelings, but it's also your own feelings that you're protecting. So if you're feeling if I'm feeling something from an interaction or from a happening at work or whatever, just to think those things through and say, okay, if it's at work, it sounds like it's within my control and I have to do something.
Yes.
Definitely. But external thing, it's not worth getting your mind all tied up in knots over it.
Right, definitely.
Yeah.
Those are great principles. In fact, I write an article with every single podcast that I do, and those will be included into as Paul's tips for overcoming I call it victimology.
Yeah.
But getting out of that cycle. So let's talk about what success, because you talked about a few of your dreams ahead of what would love to do at some point. We're not going to share all of those right now because that's probably. But what does success mean to you? Because sometimes we get into this cycle of thinking, well, I want to be successful, but we don't realize that we are already successful. And so what does that mean to you? I want you to define that for Paul Cook. What does success really mean?
It's not going to be a short definition. I don't think I can do anything in a short way.
Okay.
But let's just say, success is it's not necessarily wanting to be the CEO of a company or to work your way up the ranks. Success is to find your niche, to find where you're comfortable, happy, engaged. And it may not happen within your job. It may be within your family. It could be, many different things, success. But overall, as a human individual, are you happy, comfortable, engaged? Do you feel like, hey, I could do this for a while, sort of thing? It's like not feeling that pressure all the time. And I think a lot of people, they feel like they haven't found success because they're feeling pressure from expectations.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's a great, really a great definition. It's simple. Yeah, pretty much of just, are you comfortable? Are you happy? Do you feel like you're a productive person in society? And you're not feeling manipulated and all of that. I think that's a great definition for that. So, and I'd really like to touch on what some of your aspirations are for the future as well, because I know where your heart is in nature. And what would you like to keep pursuing or pursue more of in the future for Paul?
Gosh, I mean, I'm still pretty young, so I've got I consider myself halfway through life right now.
Well, officially, the halftime of life is officially 40. So that's
past halfway. Just second after. So, I think there's so many things that I can do. I really love what I'm doing right now with guiding and being outside and sharing my passion with people. I'd love to do more of that. If it's staying within the companies, within Backroads, or maybe pursuing something on my own even, would be great. So, in 10 years' time, hey, it would be wonderful to have a hiking company leading trips in Alberta and British Columbia. Something a little bit different than from doing what I was doing with Backroads, more integrated into my passions, which is more nature focused. And then, hey, in the long, long distant future, I would love to have a little farm with some animals, some fiber animals, because one thing we didn't talk about is my knitting.
Oh, that's right. That's one of your passions of knit. I forgot to bring that up. And it was pretty amazing.
I'm a huge knitter, and I'd love to have a little farm with some fiber creatures, and kind of go back to sort of my roots thing in my older years. That's how I see my life. Things change.
Right.
I might meet somebody and things change.
You're and you go with it. You just do.
So there's no point in trying to fight the current of the river. Honestly,
right.
A friend said to me once, and I thought it was a lovely analogy. It's like you might fight the current every once in a while, but you're going to find yourself washed up on a rock somewhere in a place that you don't want to be in the river.
Wow.
And thing to do to get off of that rock is to jump in and find a sandy bank somewhere. It's better to just go with the flow and find the sandy bank before your time.
Wow. Great advice. Great advice. You've got some good friends there.
Yeah.
So, well, Paul, you have I think you touched on so many things today in really pursuing your passion, and you were in that field of, you hated it, being in that, right behind that desk, and you could see where that future where it would lead you. You had enough freedom. You had invested enough to be able to give yourself freedom to pursue what you really, really loved. And you're so good at it. You've overcome so much as well, because coming through apartheid, that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted to linger on that a little bit, because there are people that think, oh, you don't understand what I've been through. Well, everybody's had their challenges. My goodness. And I've not had to go through that at all, anything like that. And living here in the United States and, the whole thing. But my heart goes out to those who have had to do that overcoming. I want to be able to understand it, because it'll help me understand others and help them, because you gave some great principles of getting out of even a roundabout of, is it in my control? That being one, and it's nobody else's business. Those sort of principles that you've outlined were wonderful. Well, is there something that one thing that maybe we did touch on that you want to emphasize upon? We've had quite the conversation today. It was great. I don't cut these off when we have such a good conversation. And is there something that you want to leave the audience with, some sort of encouragement that you could do there? I will leave plenty of, as many links as I can find of yours, especially for your knitting, because it's really pretty amazing, some of the things that you've made, and that's pretty fun. But how can we contact you or reach you? You are with Backroads Tour, of course. And what other thing can you leave us with?
I think, gosh, you put me on the spot.
Yeah, I did, didn't I? Sorry about that.
I think, just part of my outlook on life and how it altered and changed also has to do with my support group. And I was basically given permission by my support group to be, I my mom and my friends literally say, it's okay. You can stop being an engineer, Paul. Yeah. That's making you miserable, and do the things that you want to do. And so, get the permission from your support group. It matters a lot, because we do look for that affirmation. Aside from giving yourself permission. Yeah. And so I would say, just lean on your support group. And those are people, if they're really good friends and family, they'll help you.
Right.
Make those changes in your life and come at it with, an open heart, open mind, and just be your best self.
Paul, that's great advice. And I talk about the inner circle. In fact, in my book, Women at Halftime, I talk about our different circles of relationships and having that inner circle and that can include your family, some of your family, maybe for some people it won't. But for that, to be able to have those people in your life that you can bounce this off of, and that you would have their support. They're going to give you the calls. They're going to give you the text messages, say, yeah, keep going, or, those sort of things. Very, very important. Yeah. We all need it. It doesn't matter what stage you're at. We all need that, definitely.
Doesn't matter, because when, we've all been there. In our teens and early 20s, we're wondering what to do. And then you go to university and you're like, did I do the right thing?
Yeah.
And then later on, life changes and you have kids, but then kids move out and, you're faced with new opportunities to, care for yourself again.
Yes, exactly. I mean, we're at this stage now, having kids that are launched. In fact, we just flew in last night from visiting one of them in Cleveland, Ohio, Midwest. We're watching their journey, and my husband's on with me. Greg's on with me on my podcast once a month. And so we've talked about that too, because it does. Life changes. And how do you adjust personally and through all of those changes? So, Paul, keep going. Okay. This has been delightful. And if anybody signs up for a Backroads tour with South Africa, most likely you will see Paul or you can always call them and say, who's one of the guides? Is it Paul?
Yeah.
So it's a request. Yes. He's just an amazing person. And you're also doing some through the Canadian Rockies, or where are you up there doing that?
Came home to Canada, and I'm starting next week on Sunday in the Canadian Rockies, leading my first hiking trip, and then it's straight through until end of summer here, and then probably back to Africa. So if you want to follow me, if anybody wants to follow my adventures, got Tall Adventures on Instagram, where I take pictures of my during my trips and post those.
Tall Adventures. I will make sure that's Paul Adventures. Yes, that's right. I thought Tall Paul. Okay. Tall Paul. Yes. Okay. I'll make sure I've got that link correctly. I think you put that in our little questionnaire, so I want to make sure that I get the correct link to put in that, Paul. So so people can follow you with all of your pictures. Also, you're quite the photographer. So when we came back, Paul also sent us pictures that he had taken on our tour, which were amazing. So I was able to put a wonderful picture book together, because I figure at some stage we might forget some of the things that we've always wanted to remember. So I wanted to have those in pictures. So thank you again, Paul, and thank you all of you who are following and who are listening to our podcast. Thank you for listening today. This has been a delight for me to be able to interview Paul. We have one interview a month on this, and also on video too. If you have not seen the video, see how we are matching today on the video. We didn't even plan that. How about that? Blue and black are the colors. So, but join us every week, womenathalftime.com and it's on the Apple. It's on a number of different podcast platforms you can get. But of course, link with me, Deborah Johnson, speaker of goalsforyourlife.com. People always love the music as well. DJ Works Music. I have plenty going on there too. Plenty of things going on. So just make sure you connect. Get on my newsletter, goalsforyourlife.com, all linked together /newsletter. And you will see these articles as well when they come out. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. Deborah Johnson, and I'll look forward to being with you next time. Bye-bye for now. Thank you for joining us. It is because of our wonderful listeners like you that we keep going strong week after week. We'd love it if you'd share and follow us to not miss a single show, and even write a review. You can also find all of our articles, products, and links at womenathalftime.com.